everybody, it's Romania Black. So we're on episode 19 of Death Note, and it's actually been a while since I watched episode 18. I recorded it before going out of town for a vacation trip, and that's been like a week and a half. So it's nearly been 2 weeks since I've watched episode 18. It's been a while. So I just got done watching the English dub of episode 19, and I was like, oh my gosh. So I do have some comments from the last couple episodes. Episode 18 is aired on Patreon, and episode 17 on YouTube. And everybody's being very kosher, very cool about the comments not spoiling, which I'm happy about. But I do have some comments I want to talk about before we dive into this. Caitlin talked about how Rim notes how humans are disgusting, and Ryuk notes how humans are interesting. And that's very, very cool. I like that parallel between Rim and Ryuk and how they view humanity. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Some dude talked about the he would be a god line in episode 18 having multiple meanings, meaning that it could be talking about how high everybody's ego is in this, but also that Light is literally almost kind of a god because, you know, he seemingly has narrowed it down to Yotsuba, and it's kind of tied to, you wonder if it's tied to the fact that Light inadvertently is connecting all this because of the Death Note or not. But both in the Death Note and Attack on Titan, I like that some dude brought this up, that in both series, Attack on Titan and Death Note, they give credit to the other side of the argument, almost supporting neither and giving us, the audience, the option of choosing which we think is better. So I do like that about Death Note. We've seen with Light's whole amnesia arc thing that's happening right now, that maybe it'll be happening the rest of the series, who knows, that we see kind of these multiple perspectives about the different sides of things, and it's almost, the show frames it to where there's not really a right answer. Neither of them are really good, and so the audience is given the chance to decide what they kind of want to go for, and I like that about that series. Robin Hood Productions talked about how a lot of people believe that the strain from Light and Chief Yagami came from episode 17 and that whole showdown. I was like, okay, yeah, I could kind of see if you watched episode 17 how you would think that there would be that tension between Light and his father, especially knowing his father's the type of person who would, now he was acting, but it's in character that he was acting, that he'd be somebody that would be willing to commit suicide and kill his son for the sake of justice. So my thing though is that Light could not have known, I mean, like, unless his father sat down one evening at the table and was like, I'm all for, like, if something happens, I'll kill you and myself. Like, unless he said that at the dinner table, Light may not have known that that was how his father really truly believed. So maybe not. Alexander Q, we'll talk about this with another comment. I'll go back to your comment here in a little bit. I do want to note, as I'm going through these comments, in the English dub, Aizawa's voice actor, so good. In the English dub, when he was like yelling at Ryuzaki, such a good line. Like, his English dub actor is really good. I was like, man, Aizawa, if that's the last time we really get to see Aizawa in this series because he's pieced out, he went out with a bang. That was a really good scene with him. Inery noted how Japanese with pronouns, there's been a lot of comments. Inery's not the only one that's commented, but they were the first that I noticed about with Japanese pronouns. And I always forget this because I'm an English major, and the English language, we like pronouns. We use pronouns all the time. But with Japanese, pronouns are not as commonly used, and so the use of actual names is much more prevalent. So that could explain why Misa's name is used and she is referred to in the third person. That could be tied to it. I thought that was pretty good. Antonio Gattuli and Robin Hood Productions also talked about ham and prosciutto and melon is a delicacy. I'm pretty redneck in that case because we don't have prosciutto and ham. But in any case, I like that L only eats the sweet part. He takes the ham off and eats the melon, which is in character. And he also plays with his food because L is very childish in the last couple of episodes because he's depressed and pouty because he had him and now he's back to square one. So can we blame L? And then a non-binary Jutlung talked about how Misa possibly, and this is going to tie into some other comments, but how Misa clings to Light, maybe because he doesn't objectify her. That Misa is constantly objectified and sexualized by people around her, and that maybe she clings to Light because he's one of the few people that doesn't. She's in love with him and she wants him to love her, but he doesn't objectify her and treats her like a decent, normal human being. At least Amnesia Light does. We know that Kira Light was using her quite a lot. And then that ties into Alexander Q talking about how, I thought this was interesting, Misa's personality I've talked about how in the last couple episodes, Light seems so different without the Death Note. Almost like a totally different person. And it made me wonder, like, was the Death Note really an influence? But Alexander Q brought up a really good point. Misa, her personality is not that much different than it was with the Death Note. But Light's is very different. So what does that mean? like, how is Misa not that different with or without the Death Note, but Light is? So that's something to think of. And Alexander Q is noting that it could be that Misa is so confident with herself that when she had the Death Note, she wasn't trying to put on a facade or wear a mask. She was being herself and was confident in that. So maybe that's why she's not any different now. Whereas Light, when he had the Death Note, was putting on mask after mask after mask to hide who he really was. And maybe that was part of the influence. I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure. But Light has claimed also, Alexander Q noted that Light has claimed that he's been lucky with the Death Note, that he didn't believe he was having misfortune like Ryuk warned him. But now that we've seen him without the Death Note, it could be that like the misery of those around him because of the Death Note, like it's all going to start to catch up. And I don't know if that's going to be the case, but is bad luck going to catch up for Light? I don't know. Light's pretty much acting like a Boy Scout right now. Like at the end of the last episode when we had Iber and Weddy show up, this con man and this thief that Elle has enlisted to help. Like at the very end, Light in the English dub is like, let's do our best. And I'm like, Boy Scout Light. I kind of love Boy Scout Light because I'm like, you're just so cheesy and weird. It's great. I do want to make one more comment before we start this. And this is a more personal note, but as we go further into the series, I feel it needs to be addressed. So just going to put this out there. But I've had several comments, not one person, not two people, like several, over the last several episodes talking about me feeling empathy for Misa. And I'm just going to say this as delicately as I can and as lighthearted as I can because it is a rather heavy subject matter. But I've had a lot of people in the comments be like, how can you feel empathy for Misa? Like she's a murderer, blah, blah, blah. Like you don't understand, like blah, blah, things like that. First of all, I don't feel empathy for Misa as a killer. I think it's wrong that she's done these killings. I gave Light a really hard time because he's a murderer too. So I give Misa a hard time for that as well. But where I find empathy with Misa as a character is because unlike Light, who comes from a place of privilege, he has a very wealthy family, a nice home life, he's never had to want for anything, he's never had anybody bother him, he's pretty much had a pretty scot-free, wonderful life, other than being bored. That's been his biggest detriment in life is that he's been bored. Other than that, Misa's character, on the other hand, has been a victim of sexual assault and sexual harassment and has lost her parents in a murder and has watched them die and has had to live with that trauma. So Misa has had a very traumatic life versus Light's pretty much carefree life. Now, does that excuse either of them from murdering people? No. And I'm pretty open about that in the show. But I want to be clear. My empathy with Misa as a character is, and the only thing I will say about it is because I myself have been a victim of sexual assault and harassment. So that is where I draw empathy with Misa. That is the sole reason I draw empathy for Misa, and that is not likely to change. So I just want to put that out there, that if I'm talking about Misa with empathy in the comments, it is because of that. And that's all I'm going to say about the matter, but I feel like it needs to be brought up because I've had several people comment and question why I could feel that way about her. And if you're someone that has suffered from something like that, then yes, I think you can find empathy with her character and understand where she's coming from in a lot of her behaviors and actions. And that's all I'm going to say. And then we're going to get back onto the thing. So I just wanted to bring that up because it was really bothering me that people were commenting about that. And it's one of those things, I don't want to write it in the comments. I'm like, it's personal. I don't want to talk about it, but I want to bring it up now. So hopefully, if you're thinking about making those comments, hopefully you've listened to this at this point and will reconsider or be considerate of your audience that could be reading it. So with that being said, let us not waste any more time. It's been nearly 10 minutes. It's been a week and a half since I've watched Death Note, the longest I've spent without watching Death Note. So let's just dive right in, shall we? We are going to start episode 19 of Death Note, and we are going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Matsuda, you baka. God, this episode. Ah. I feel like the mangaka and the creator, I feel like this is such a weird time for Death Note, and I felt it in the comment section, and I feel like this is for a lot of people not their favorite part of Death Note. And let me be clear, I'm avoiding spoilers, right? There is a very distinct part of me that's like, Light, especially after this episode, I'm like, Light is not going to stay in Boy Scout mode for the rest of this series. No. Which is, we're going to talk about that, and that's why I wanted to bring Whiteboard Kun out. I don't think Light is going to stay in this Boy Scout mode forever, and this episode kind of made that abundantly clear. But at the same time, we'll talk about that. But at the same time, I don't mind Light like this. It's such a bittersweet feeling. There's a part of me that loves the fact that I've wanted since the start of this series, since we were introduced to Elle, I've wanted Light and Elle to work together and been like, well, what would it be like if they were working together? And we're getting that. The creator's like, here's your cake. But then at the same time, we've gotten so accustomed to seeing Light be like the egotistical, like, Moriarty that he is, that now that he's Watson, it's not quite the same. And so I wondered how people would take this part, because from episodes like 16, 17, 18, and now 19, we've been on like this journey with Light losing his knowledge of the Death Note. And for Misa, her personality's pretty much stayed the same, but for Light, it's been quite different. So I don't want spoilers. I don't want to know what to expect. I don't want any clues of what's to come. But I imagine that we're at the halfway point of the series, and the series has taken a quite different turn than where it started. And so I wonder, those people that read the manga when this was coming out, they were like, what is this with Matsuda? Because it's such a weird episode. It's such a weird episode. There's parts of it I really like. I would say, honestly, and this is a kind of a testament to Death Note, this may be like my least favorite episode of the series, but I still really enjoyed it. So I'm kind of like, I liked it a lot, but I could definitely, there's like not a jump the shark moment, but the stuff with Matsuda, it was too easy. I guess that's the point. Him getting out of things by acting drunk and jumping from the building, it was too easy. It felt too easy. And so I will say this, as far as like, I don't think it's a plot contrivance or anything like that, but it's a little bit weaker writing than this series has given. But I think that the mangaka is building up to something. Something's going to happen. Something's going to snap. Something's going to happen. It's building up to it. It's going to be this big giant reveal. I'm excited for it. I'm ready for it. I feel like I'm holding a little bomb, and there's a fuse been lit, and it's going shh, and it's slowly sizzling down to something. I don't want to know what it is. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't want to know when it's going to happen, but you know in the back of your forefront, I'm filing it away that something's going to happen. So I am excited about that, at least. That does have me excited to see what's to come. But with that being said, Matsuda, I'm excited to see where it's going to go to from here. It's almost as if the Yotsuba group is like cannibalizing itself. It's smothering itself from within. And Elle's just like, we're going to capitalize on that because these guys aren't as smart as us. So, but there was lots of little moments. My whole thing when I react to a series and review it is I'm not going to hold back. If I notice something is like a weak plot point, I'm not going to hold back. I like to play devil's advocate a lot, but I'm not going to hold back my opinion and be like, oh, this was flawless. No, there's a couple things in this episode that I was like, man, if they just done this one thing, they would have really found out something. But then again, that's been this whole series. How many times has Elle been super close? How many times has Light nearly gotten caught? This series is all about like just the littlest decisions can have the biggest impacts. And that's pretty good as far as the writing goes. At least it's consistent, right? But yeah, Matsuda, God. We'll talk about him in this episode. I want to throttle him. I want to strangle that boy by his scrawny neck. I'm sure Elle did too. But I'm honestly amazed we still have the old OP. I'm kind of surprised by that, if I'm being honest. But that's all right. I'll take it. I love this OP, so as long as we've got it, I'm here for it. So we get it's rare that we get a recap in this series. I feel like this episode is probably... here's the thing. It is a setup episode, if anything. This episode is setting up quite a lot. with Light, with Elle, with the plot. It's very much a setup episode. And I'm not going to say it's filler. It's not. But just the fact that it focuses on Matsuda as a character who we've established is kind of dead weight is fitting, right? But let's talk about this. So Matsuda's whole thing is that he wants to feel like he's helping the cause. And the sad thing is, inadvertently, he does help, but he does help them narrow down and figure out that Kira is in the building. But it's like Matsuda, honey, the way you go about it, like, makes me want to lower my blood pressure. But yeah, so we come back to, I want to make note, I'm going to take a picture of how Matsuda sees everybody, because it is the funniest damn thing. Elle looks like a lizard. Look at this shit. Like, Light looks pompous and pretentious. Misa's just like frowning at him. Aizawa looks like he's about to go Super Saiyan. Chief Yagami looks like Gendo from Neon Genesis. And Elle looks like a lizard looking at that donut. I like that in Matsuda's brain, the image that strikes for him is Elle licking that donut. Like, that's his impression of Light. It's the funniest thing. I freaking love it. But he wants to play a more active role. So we're going to put Matsuda over here. That Matsuda wants to have the more active role. Well, good job, bud. You did end up being active in all of this, so I guess we can't knock you too much, right? Okay. Like settle whiteboard coon down a little bit. But yeah, he wants to actually do something. God, Matsuda. Baka. For a second, I was like, I don't want to look it up, damn it. I can't look up the voice actor for the actual Ryuzaki, the actor in this episode, because I don't want to accidentally come across any spoiler information. It sounded like Yuki Kaji, but is it too soon for him to be a voice actor? I don't know what Yuki Kaji's first roles were. I thought the voice actor for the actor that's with Misa in this scene, it was either Miyano Mamoru playing both him and Light, which would be hilarious if he was playing also the lead actor here that's supposed to be like the seductive prince. But it also kind of sounded like Yuki Kaji. So I'm like, could this have been Yuki Kaji's first voice acting role? Probably not, but down in the comments, if you know who plays the actor that Misa's co-starring with, and if it's Yuki Kaji or Miyano Mamoru, please let me know, or if it's somebody else. But I love that Misa is just like, I can't do this scene because I can't do kissy faces and all this because it's not my boyfriend. And they're like trying to have this moment, and she's like, nope, Mr. Director, I have a boyfriend. Can we cut the love scenes? Oh, Misa, never change, girl. And everybody's like, oh, come on. Like, are you joking? They're like, wait a second. Where's this coming from? She's like, can't we fake a kiss? And meanwhile, this guy is like the most handsome man and possibly he's like a shoujo protagonist. And she's like, can't we just fake it? God, it's great. I love it. We can't make a movie like that. If I say no, then it's no. Let the girl do what she wants. But it's like, come on, Misa, you knew what you were signing up for, right? So they happen to be filming right by Yotsuba's group's Tokyo head office, right? So I'm gonna put Misa over here because we'll talk about her later. I'm gonna put Misa over here. She's gonna have like a few things. She no romance. No romance unless it's Light. So she's taking a vow of celibacy. Because that's not going to happen. But in any case, we're going to come back to Misa in this. But I was like, he's like, today is Friday. And Matsuda knows that the trend, as old Daddy Yagami has found out, is that most of the murders are happening on the weekends. So whoever is Kira is probably deciding who the target is going to be. And he has this whole thing, because Matsuda's young and impressionable, and a young cop, he wants to do good. He doesn't want to be seen as dead weight. But I'm like, look, you taking the initiative is one thing, but going straight into the headquarters, it was such a dumb move. I was like, Matsuda, you are lucky to be alive. You are so lucky. Like, it could have just, I'm like, just him running off. I was like, why? Why? I almost felt like it was like Kira was writing Matsuda, telling him, like, go to the Otsuba headquarters and do this. It was almost like Kira was making him do it. I was like, Matsuda, why? Just, so frustrating. That I feel like it literally was the mangaka being like, let's have Matsuda do something. I don't know. It did feel a little bit forced, but it ends up being hilarious, so I'm fine with it. And she's like, why? Why did he go somewhere? I do like Misa's angelic costume with the angel wings. When she was walking away, it almost looked like one of the wings was black and one of the wings was white, kind of like Ryuk and Rim. So I thought that was cool. And I was going to comment on it in the reaction, but then it turned out to just be the shadows. So it was fine. But yeah, but Matsuda, I'm like, honey, I appreciate your fervor, but this was a very bold baka plan. Could have gone horrifically wrong. Nearly went horrifically wrong. He's just lucky he has good resources. So, the important thing of this episode, though, is Light. Oh, dead-eyed Light. The fudge. So, Light, we cut to him with the first time we've seen him have dead eyes since losing the Death Note. Since losing it. It's the first time we've seen him with these dead eyes. And he's just like staring off into space. And so everybody's like checking the list, doing this, and Light just sitting there staring and saying, I'm like, Light, we were having nice things. What we doing? Would I punish evildoers if I could kill? And so he questions, would I kill to punish evildoers? Like he's just mulling this over. Would I actually kill someone to punish them for their crimes just by seeing someone's face and name? Okay. Just by seeing a face and a name. So he's mulling this over. Indeed, there are people in the world. There are people that the world can do without. That's the same logic he was thinking in episode 1, right? So we go back to that episode 1 logic that the world could do without people. I haven't rewatched those episodes since the start of this, but I remember that back in episode 1, he didn't have maybe quite the dead eyes that he does in this scene, but he was contemplating, like, when he first got the Death Note, he's like, you know, what's the world without one or two of these people? Like, he was thinking the same thing. The same thing. Yeah. And then saying, but I don't think that I would become a murderer just to change the world. So that is the interesting twist there. I don't think I would become a murderer to change the world. So there is kind of like a Bilbo Baggins nature to it, like from Lord of the Rings, because in Lord of the Rings, when Bilbo Baggins, he had these convictions and these thoughts, but when he got a hold of the One Ring, it just kind of like, it exacerbated it. It kind of like expanded it, and like it's like a drop of ink just spreading across the page, right? It just concentrated it more, right? So I always say that meme where he's like, why shouldn't I take it? Why shouldn't it be mine? Like, you know, it just kind of like those desires and feelings got become a frenzy, right? And so it's not bold to think that Light could have made the jump once he had the Death Note could have like spurred him to be like, he didn't think that he would become a murderer, change the world, but then it kind of leaps from that to being like, well, but what if you could do it? And then you'd be a god. Like, wouldn't that be great? Like, I feel like the Death Note, it's that temptation, right? And so the thoughts are there, much like they were in episode 1. It almost feels like there's this weird concept of how much of this was destined to be. So, because Light, it seems like, you know, when he lost the Death Note, everything was restarted, and everything was like at a restart, and he was like, oh, well, I'm just this innocent Boy Scout. And now as time is going on, and he's slowly, it's like, is he transitioning? Was that like blank slate now kind of easing back into the Light that was at the beginning of the series? And that Light at the beginning of the series was questioning, you know, do I have the right and the power to punish someone? And at this point, by the end of episode 1, Light was like, yes, I could become not a murderer, but a god to change the world. At this point, Light's not there. He's like, I don't think I'd become a murderer to change the world. But he questions, like, would I kill people to punish evildoers? So it's almost like, it's not like a drug and a withdrawal and an addiction, but it's like, it's almost as if Light had been reset, losing the Death Note, and now it's kind of like everything is settling. Like everything's settling, and we're getting back to the Light that was at the end of episode 1. So I was wondering, like, I had wondered after the last episode, I'm like, if Light, by some chance, stumbles across Ryuk and the Death Note again, one, would he remember Ryuk? And would he remember all of the past... He may remember Ryuk, but would he remember all the past transactions with the Death Note previously if he gets reunited with it again? But 2, is Light going to want to go back? I mean, what if he doesn't? Is he going to go back to the way that he was? Like, how does that work? This is kind of suggesting that, yeah, he could. He could go back to the way that he was. And that's kind of scary. But it's interesting because it's like, well... What is caught? Is it how Light's always been? Does the Death Note influence it? Is it the thought of the Death Note? Is it that temptation knowing it exists? What is it? You know, there's all these questions. But I like that as he's thinking this, L's just like, he's like, what are you doing? And it's, yeah, Light is staring in his direction. God, that just the image of him with the dead eyes. I was like, I did not think this soon we'd see it again. He's like, I'm thinking too hard about this. There's no way anyone could... Okay, so he's like, there's no way that anyone could murder so many people. There's no way that someone could murder so many people and not have any memories of doing so. Well, you could if it was a supernatural entity. Yeah. So it's almost as if Light is like wondering, he's like, could I have been Kira? Because L's convinced that they are. L told him in the last episode, he's like, no, you're Kira. He's like, I'm fully convinced you and Misa at some point were the Kira and second Kira, but those powers have transferred away from you now and you've forgotten. So L's pretty much cracked the code. He just doesn't know it. And Light has been questioning, like, is that true? Could that be? And so I guess Light in this moment is trying to rationalize, being like, could I really be Kira? Is it possible? And in Light's mind, he's like, well, he's like, would I kill people to stop them doing evil? But he's like, there's no way I could kill them and not remember, right? And he's like, there's no way I would murder just to change the world, right? So it's God, it's interesting. And he's just contemplating it, like just zoned out. And then he goes back to normal, right? And I love it. So I love this as he gets, and then Ryuzaki says, what's wrong? And then he cuts back and the light comes back into his eyes. And we immediately cut to Ryuzaki with his sad cake. This episodes 17, 18, 19 are the Ryuzaki sad cake episodes. Because they're just him sadly eating cake like, hey, Light. He looks so pitiful. He looks so pitiful. He's like, you're staring at me. And it's like, oh, are you angry that I'm the only one eating cake, aren't you? It's like, no, I will say this. It's both sad and hilarious, Ryuzaki, when he's depressed, because he's like, what's up, Light? Do you want the cake? And Light's like, no, that's not it. He's like, no. He's like, no, that's not it at all. He's like, here, I wasn't envying you. Let it be known, Ryuzaki did offer his cake to Light. He offered it to him, but he said no. So I'm going to put L/Ryuzaki over here. So I'm going to just file away that Light's having this existential crisis of could he have been Kira and would he kill people now that we're looking at it from a different angle, like now that he's looking at it from a different perspective. I'm just going to file it away. But yeah, so we go back to Atari, contacting them, and saying Detective Eraldo Coyle has been asked to uncover L's identity. So Eraldo Coyle. I'm like, is that like an anagram or something? Or like, what is that? Interesting. I wonder if it's like, again, it's another alias. It's an alias for L. Interesting. Eraldo Coyle. That's such a weird name. I'm sure it has a meaning, but I'm not going to look it up because I don't want to be spoiled. And the man who's the next greatest detective after L. This is so genius. I love this so much. Who would send such a request? And they're like, it was the VP of the Rights and Planning Department of Yotsuba. Masahiko Kida. Yep. And so they're like, yeah, they pretty much narrowed it down. Yotsuba is linked to Kira. We know that much. If they want L's identity, then that means they probably want to kill him. Yes, Light, that is more than likely. And he's like, that's not good. And so we're already shorthanded. Now we have to worry about Coil. And this part floored me where he's like, oh, that's me. Like, L is like, I'm that detective. It's another alias. The top 3 detectives in the world, L, Coil, and Deneuve. So Deneuve, which is French, isn't it? Are another alias. So here's the crazy thing, is that establishing between L and Light the idea of multiple identities, which is kind of crazy, because that the one thing that's been so interesting about this series is that we talked about this right before the reaction, that Light had put up all these different masks. He had Light, the perfect schoolboy. He had Light, the detective's son. He had Light, who was Kira. And he had Light, who was Misa's boyfriend. Like, he had all these different masks and hats he was putting on. And L is really not any different. L has all these different identities as well. He has this alias as a detective, this alias, the alias he has now. It's funny how similar Light and L are, just in different ways. But they're both very similar. But yeah, it's crazy. The top 3 detectives are all me. People who try to uncover me usually fall for this. So yeah, and that's so smart, because it's like, oh yeah, you just hire this one detective to go find him, and it's actually him. And so at the end, when he's using Iber to like pose as him, I'm like, that's genius. I'm like, of course, Iber can pose as you as Geraldo, and then go in and you can get stuff done in espionage and nobody's the wiser. And it's a detective, so you know they're gonna have some privacy. And he's like, I'll give you a strawberry, so please keep it a secret. I'm like, what the heck? I'm just like, L is just like, you know. It's almost like he's trying to distract everybody from the fact that he had this great plan and is this genius who has these multiple identities. He's like, yeah, here's a strawberry. I love that he gives it to Mogi. Mogi takes it and puts it in his pocket. Like, it's such a little gesture and a little animation, but it's really, really cute. And what's also cute that I will notice, and I will show you guys up here on the screen for all of you to see, is the most adorable shot of Light and L imaginable. Look at them chibi faces! Look at that chibi! L looks like he's 7. And Light looks like he just got invited to his bar mitzvah. Like, it's the cutest freaking thing in the world. I'm like, that is adorable. Yeah. And he's like, well, of course, L, why would we expect any less? Why would we expect anything less from Matsuda, who's acting like a moron chasing these guys after? When he was sitting there being like, I should leave. I'm like, you should. But it's too late. He's gone too far up now. I'll give Matsuda credit that he got as far as he did and did as much as he could without getting caught. I'm like, I also like that we've had colors identifying. We've done like the primary colors now. We had the blues. So Misa and L have been in blues. Light has been in red. And now we have Matsuda, who's in yellow. Which is kind of funny because you think of yellow, you think of it's cowardly or something like that, which kind of Matsuda's baja. But I do like that we have like the primary colors established and Matsuda's is yellow. So yeah, the secret meetings, I'm like, they go up to the 19th floor, which is funny, this 19th episode. He runs up the stairs. It's great. And so Iber is the one that's talking about like getting close to the one guy. And I like Witty. Witty, she kind of has a Misa vibe to her with the cigarette and the security systems. I love her fashion. She's great. But yeah, so in any case, they're all talking about how they're like, whatever happens, just don't get caught. We can't let them know that we're onto him. And I'm like, Also, I commented about it in the reaction, but the boardroom and everything, it is so tacky. It gives me like Back to the Future Biff vibes. It's just like that red flooring and like the marble and the pattern on pattern, like nothing matches. It clashes. I want to like tear it all down. It reminds me of Back to the Future. It reminds me of Beetlejuice. Like when they redecorate the house, it's just gross. I don't like it. But the whole time that Matsuda's like listening in on them, I was like for a second I was like, okay, no, it's fine, because I thought he was gonna like push in and the door was gonna push in, and I was like, okay, no, that it won't be that cliche because the door is like shut. But no, instead it's them opening the door to leave and then he falls in. Oh my god, I can't. And he was like, I did it, and then right as he said that, he falls in. And I love that Elle had just got done making this big old plan, telling them not to get caught, not to be noticed, to be as sly and stealthy as possible. And then that's when Watari's like, yeah, Matsuda made a note on his belt. And the look on Elle's face is the sassiest, like shadiest look, where he's like, are you freaking kidding me? He's like, from where? And Watari's like, I love Watari has the eyes closed, give me strength face, where he's like, it seems it's coming from the main offices in Yotsuba. Like, just, nah. And then I love that Elle's like, forget everything I just told you. We've got to regroup. No time to panic. No worries. But I will give Matsuda this. He covered hard and he committed. He's a baka and he committed, saying that he's Taro Matsui with Yoshida Productions and just came in there to like try to get Misa as their new spokesperson. God, this man, lying through his teeth, doing whatever he could to try to survive. Ridiculous. And I just love it. He's like, Matsuda, you idiot. God, it's great. It's great. So we got 2 new Death Note rules. If the Death Note is stolen and the owner is killed by a thief, then its ownership will automatically be transferred to the thief. So, and the owner's killed by the thief. So basically, you don't want that to happen. And then the other rule was, when the same name is written on more than 2 Death Notes, the note, which was the first filled in, will take effect regardless of the time of death. So that's curious. Like if I'm just, again, in these types of scenarios that are hypotheticals, I'm just picturing like Elle, Misa, and Light all with Death Notes of their own, and they both like, it's like a speed run. They're like, they just start writing the same name. So basically, if more than 2 Death Notes, so if Light and Misa, and I don't know if it's 2 or more than 2. So if Ryuk, Misa, and Light all wrote Elle's name and time of death and death in their own Death Notes, whoever wrote first is the one that will take effect. Interesting. I mean, they're going to die either way, so it sucks, but it's like however they die is determined by who wrote first. Okay. Interesting. Interesting indeed. So, going back to this, so, God, Matsuda lying through his teeth. Oh my God, he's like, I'm dead. I wonder if Ryuzaki will save me. I'm surprised Ryuzaki was just like, but Ryuzaki, to his credit, he does care about his people. He does care about Matsuda. I want to make note, and this is, again, hypothetical. I'm probably assuming, and I'm sure a lot of people will argue that I'm wrong, and that's fine. You can have your own opinion. But I wonder, in comparison to Light, if Light was working with Misa, and let's say that Misa was, let's just say, hypothetically, Matsuda was working for Light while he was Kira. Just kind of like what Misa was doing before they gave up the Death Note. And this sort of situation happened. Would Light have gone to the extremes to try and rescue Matsuda? Or would Light have tried to just kill off Matsuda and have it over with? I don't know. It would depend on Light having the Death Note. If Matsuda was caught in a situation like this, I could see Kira, Light, killing Matsuda off before they could. And then that way, none of the information about them, like trying to go after them, would get out. But that's not the case because Elle doesn't have the Death Note. and actually cares about Matsuda. So I guess my point is, I wonder if Light from episode 9 would offer to try to save Matsuda like Elle is now in the same circumstance. That's a hard question to ask, and it's hard to kind of know the answer to that, but it's an interesting thought that went through my head. I was like, Elle's always been wanting to make sure that he protects his people and those around him. Light, when he had the death note and was Kira, didn't seem to really care about what happened to the others around him, as long as his agenda was, pushed. So that's interesting. Interesting indeed. But yeah, I also love this show and its shameless use of the OP as the ringtone. Shameless use of it. It's absolutely wonderful, and I hope even when the OP changes for this series, I hope that ringtone sticks because it's wonderful. But man, also want to make note, Elle, when he changes his voice as the bro friend of Matsuda, like his voice does sound different. It's kind of cool. I like it a lot. Where he's like, hey. And he's like, hey, Matsui. It's like, oh my God, it's Rizaki. And they're just like dead-eyed looking at him like, who is that? Asahi. It's like, oh, Asahi. The silver-haired guy, the one that ends up dying at the end of this episode, he's the most chill one. The guy with the brown hair is like freaked out the whole time. He's like, are you home already? Look at Light with his hand on his hip, his hand cocked on his hip. Yeah, just, I cannot. I'm having too much fun with this episode in the animation. It's great. But he's like, are you by yourself? I love how they speak in code. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm by myself. What's up? And he's like, Miss Amani's somewhere else. Matsuda's alone. So it's like, okay. I love that they're deciphering it. And he's like, want to go drinking? Like, oh, Elle. It's great. And he's like, I'm going to have to pass. Like, just Elle. They basically talk in code to try to get out of it and to keep stalling. While Light's trying to get a hold of Misa. Okay. So, they try to concoct a plan of how to save Matsuda. And Elle's like, well, if Matsuda dies, it would justify suspicion against Yotsuba. So it's like, do we sacrifice Matsuda to justify us going in after Kira? No. He's like, let's just watch the situation. And so then the council's deciding on what to do. So this part's interesting. We got our council of 8, now 7. And they're like, the question is whether or not he heard us. And the one guy with the spiky hair, the guy that looks like a Yakuza dude, he's like, nope, any possibility, we got to kill him. Just let's not take any chances. Let's just go through it. And the one guy that is the VP is like, well, why did he come to pitch his client? Like, he's probably thinking, he's like, is he a police officer? Like, is this, if we kill him, is that going to give them a lead on us? But then the guy with the glasses says, no, that's not the case because the police have abandoned this case. They've completely withdrawn from the Kira case, so he can't be an officer. And then, again, the Yakuza guy's like, it doesn't matter who he is. Let's get rid of him. So we have the 2 guys that are interrogating, and then the other 6, right? We have to kill him. But the one silver-haired guy, when he said he wanted them to meet Misa, that should have been a sign that he was going to go by the end of this episode, in all honesty, because he was like the most open-minded to Matsuda, and I was like, man, that should have been a thing. Also, what the hell is on the wall behind them in this? What is on the wall behind them? It's like a picture of a Sasquatch with 2 like gremlins. What? What is that painting? So tacky. I wonder if it's like supposed to be some kind of symbolic thing. Also, Misa, she like sees the text message, the voicemail from Light. She's like, oh, Light, you meant to call me. And he's like, it's for the job, Misa. He just abandoned me here. He's horrible. And I'm getting called on my work phone. So yeah, I like the idea of Misa holding up both cell phones. Like just holding them up like side by side. It's great. It's a good visual. I like it. She looks like the Swan Princess. Oh, I love it. And so they convince her to go to the tower to negotiate the pitch for them. And Misa, who doesn't know any wiser, is like, oh, sure, that's amazing, Matsu. I totally would want to do that. But she's actually pretty good. She's pretty good at manipulating the crowd. We'll talk about that. She's like, that's what you've been up to. I'll do my best. And she's so sincere that they fall for it. And he gives them all the information. I love the little tug the little tug that Ryuzaki does on Light's sleeve where he's like, that little tug, it's so good. And he makes him look. And he's like, Light, we may be able to save Matsuda. God, that look of L, that is like the most, I don't know, it's not seductive, but that look by L is the most like Bishonen like cat look we've seen him have this entire series. Like his eyes are like huge and his pupils are like blown. Like, what? It is like, it's not like any look of Ryuzaki we've gotten so far in this. So it's so curious. Where he's like, but we'll need Misa's help. I'm sure she'll listen to you. It's almost like he's trying to like tempt Light to be like make her help us, you know? What the fudge? And then Light's like, what? It's great. And then she shows up with like they look like, I don't know if you've ever been to a, they look like shot girls. Like if you've been to a bar and they're like promotional, they're hype girls. They just look like hype girls where they have the uniform on and they're just like promoting like a beverage or something and they give out shots to the crowd and stuff. That's what they look like. They look like a bunch of hype girls. But, oh, Misa. She's like, I'm Misa. I don't do nudes, but swimsuits and lingerie are okay. Girl has standards. She's like, this is how we do this. Which, again, makes sense for her character. She's like, pleased to meet you. And, of course, Matsuda's like, aha. And so the one guy with the blonde hair, I don't think he's Kira. And he's like the big oaf of the group. Because he's like, oh, she's really cute. And like totally goes along with it. But yeah, they're like, that's not the problem right now, don't you think? And she's like, since this is for Tsuba, I got the okay from the office to have a special reception. And I love that she just gives Matsuda the wink like, you know, special reception, like, come on. I'm like, she's smarter than she looks. So they have like the reception there and they bring in all the hype girls. So Misa, she is good at manipulating and entertaining. Girl is a hostess. She knows exactly what she's doing and she knows how to work the crowd, which is great. She's like, we'll be entertaining you with girls from the agency tonight. Like, as like a promotional thing. And then I want to get like a shot of all 7 of these guys. A shot of all 7 of them. I want to get a shot because that one guy says, don't you think this is headed in a weird direction? I'm like, that's this series in a nutshell right now. It's the most ridiculous. No, like, it can't be helped. And right now we can't leave that manager alone. And the one guy's like, well, I'm going to enjoy myself, so screw you all. And I love that they have the Misa, like the slippers, the pink slippers with the hearts. And it's got 3 hearts, one for Light, one for Elle, and one for Misa. It's cute. Matsuda's like, I'm so dead. Ryuzaki and the others can see us from here. I might be saved. And yeah, they've got sushi, they've got sake. They're like drinking up and eating up. Like the one guy, like they've all got the hype girls. Like everybody's got like a girl with them. Except for the one guy. The one guy, here's the thing. I'm looking at the crowd here. Like the guy with the orange, he was like all about this. He's got his arm around the girl. The guy that has the girl arm around the girl in the green, the bald man, he's telling them all about like their plans. The silver-haired guy that ends up dying is with the girl in the purple. The VP and the guy with the dark hair, they're by themselves. But the guy, the really pretty man that looks like a Yu Yu Hakusho villain. He's like got the long, sleek black hair. He is standing up, not sitting down with any of them. He seems the most wary of the situation. So I'm like, I want to see like how their seating arrangements kind of vary as we go through this. But he seems the most like sitting down, like not having. And I was like, man, Misa's pretty good at this. And then Matsuda takes the chance to like take the phone, run off to the bathroom. And that's when Elle's like, yeah, they're probably going to try to kill you. So we may be able to save you, but here's the thing. For that to happen, you have to die before they kill you. And I wondered, I was like, so is he going to have to fake his death? I was like, is he going to fake his death? How's that going to work? It's exactly like you think is going to happen. The moment he was up on the ledge, I was like, oh, he's going to fall. And somehow he's not going to die. They've got something in place. You just don't know exactly what it is until it happens, right? And then Matsu's like, wait, what? And he's like, listen to me very closely. The fact that Elle thought all of this up like within minutes is just... Elle's just like big brain in it. Like, this is what we're going to do. And he tells Matsuda the plan. Matsuda's like, oh shit, you really? That's impossible. But we're going to do it. Okay. And so we cut back to the thing. So the one guy has actually... So by this point, the guy that looks like Ganondorf, that looks like the Yakuza with the long hair, and the two guys with the shaggy hair, they've all talked to the ladies, right? They're talking to the ladies. The guy with the bald man is talking to the woman in green again. Okay. We still don't know. I want to see the guy with the dark black hair. He's still by himself. He is the most suspicious. I think he's Kira. But he is the most suspicious. He's not having any of this. Okay. And then the other guy's, all right, what's going on? And then Matsuda pretends to be drunk. And then goes out on the ledge and they're like, oh my God. And the thing of it is, the funny thing is when he does the handstand, he's a cop. Here's the thing about Matsuda. He's a police officer. He's in shape. So he could do the handstand. That part all makes sense. But it's funny because when he does the handstand and acts all crazy, it reminds me of Ryuk. It reminds me of Ryuk having his apple withdrawals and like doing the handstands. But also the handstand allows him to easily make himself look like he falls off the roof. It allows him to have a little bit more control there. So that is interesting. And it looks more natural, right? That he falls. And they're like, you idiot, that's dangerous. Don't do that. God. And then, yep. And then, oh, Matsuda, I love that look of determination where he's like, if he didn't hit that mattress just right, he would have been kersplat onto the pavement. But no, our boy, he uses that moment to like push down to make himself look like he falls, but it was very much intentional. Yep. And he managed to fall, and then we see him land on the mattress. God, if he had missed that, bye-bye Matsuda, but Mogi had him. All right. And then Chief Yagami throws the bag to make the sound of the body splatting. And then that's when Ivor comes down with the wig, and Wheatie is like, oh my God, oh no. And then, oh, I heard a thud and it came out, how horrible. And then I love Ivor's like, this role sucks. I like Ivor and Wheatie, and we've barely seen them do anything. I'm like, they're kind of great. Like, these criminals. What the hell, Elle? How do you know these people? And so then Misa's like, everyone just leave this test and go home. This is, at this point, I mean, the part about him doing the handstand and falling would be believable because, I mean, how are you going to know, like, somebody being able to control their body like that and no, they don't think he's a cop. But the part here where Misa's like, everybody just go home, that would seem like a red flag, but these guys are part of a shady organization and they don't want the press. They don't want to get found out. They probably think she's just trying to make a business move with them, being like, oh, don't worry, we'll take care of it and get together later. Wink, wink. And they're like, well, we don't need the press to find us, so bye. Also, what a bunch of scumlords. That guy just died and they're peacing out. And she's like, please consider me for the commercial. It's okay. She's like, I'm doing you guys a solid, so you'll consider me for the commercial, right? And then they just get out of there and walk away with the slippers. And so then we have, and it's great. I should have noticed. You can't tell Light pulling the stretcher. You can't tell Light because he's got the hat on. Although those khakis, those Boy Scout khakis would have gave it away. But Elle, I wasn't paying attention, but you could see Elle's spiky hair from under the helmet. Like, oh my God, ridiculous. And then it looked like Light was in the crowd there with the jacket on, but it clearly was somebody else. Just somebody like a lookalike. And then they're like, it's a good thing we saw him die right before our eyes. I'm like, that line of dialogue just bugs me because it's like, that line of dialogue is like very cliche and like, it just seems like bad writing, or it's like, it's a good thing we saw him die right before our eyes. That just seems like a bad line, bad dialogue. Not a fan of it, but I'll forgive this series for it. If that's the only bad dialogue we get, okay, sure. And then they peace out. And we have Matsuda in the ambulance with Elle and Light. Or no, it's Iber. Iber is in the ambulance. I always think it's Matsuda, but it's Iber because he has a 5 o'clock shadow and pulls the wig off. And Elle's like, I know we're shorthanded, but I don't like doing this. Elle's like, this was too risky. Too risky for us. No. Matsuda, you idiot. Indeed. Yeah, he's back there. I thought for a second Chief Yagami was going to have like some little heart-to-heart with him and be like, why were you a dummy? I thought he was going to have a heart-to-heart with him. And Matsuda's like, I just wanted to play a role. And Chief Yagami being like, stop. Stick to the coffee. I was waiting for him to have this heart-to-heart. And it's just a nod. And Wheaty's just like, God, you guys, like, just whatevs. I do love that shot of her with the cigarette. That's such a cool shot. It looks very noir. I love it. But yeah, so they say the drunken manager dies in a drunken fall. They frame it, the cover up, and to get Yotsuba to not suspect them. Like, Matsuda, you nearly got your cover blown. And so the Kita guy, he ends up getting the call from Iber, who's posing as Eraldo, who's going to meet them. God, I love it. Eraldo Coyle, I want to discuss my terms with you. And so basically they blackmail him. They're like $2 million advance and $8 million upon completion. And it's all a big setup. And they're like, if you don't hire me, then I'm going to leak the information regardless. So even if we don't commission him, we have to pay the $2 million to keep him silent for hush money. So yeah, the white-haired one's in the corner there. I'm guessing he's the one that's going to disappear at the end, right? And so they all are like, what do we do? And this guy, I was like, why did you say you went out? You can't say that now. You're good as dead. Like, the moment he said he went out, I was like, well, you're dead. You're not going to make it past these meetings. And yeah, the one guy that looks like Ganondorf was like, you'll be dead tomorrow. Like, you've already screwed yourself. Too bad. And so they're like, go ahead and pay him. Let's do this. And then, man, I feel like the mangaka was like, I want to draw this sexy spy. I'm going to bring in Wheaty. She'll do it. She, like, has, like, the Faye Valentine levels of femme fatale going on. And she's like, man, the security here's terrible. It wasn't hard to wiretap it at all. Like, she's here in her, like, Austin Powers espionage outfit. And Matsuda's like, this is so cool. It's been a week since I snuck in and nearly blew all of our covers. Things seem to be moving very smoothly. Don't you jinx this, Matsuda. Stop that. We're almost there. And then I like that Elle has this literal giant brownie. And he's like, one of them is Kira. And then, let me see. Yeah, the one guy is gone. Yep, the silver-haired man's gone. Ah, damn. Crazy talk, y'all. Oh my God. It's great. I'm sold. I'm curious to see what all Iber and Wheaty are going to do. I'm curious to see what they're going to do in this. It seems like maybe next episode we're going to get more of them and how they're going to play a part, because Elle's hired them, so how are they going to pull their weight? That's going to be interesting to see. But this whole thing with Light, it's there. I'm going to file it away for now, but so like I said, I feel like I'm holding a little grenade in my hand, and that the creator of Death Note is like, just keep holding it. It's fine. Nothing's going to happen. It's all good. And I know that something's going to happen, but it's the build up and the surprise that I'm looking forward to, and seeing what's all going to happen with that. So I don't know. I say this wasn't my favorite episode. I really liked this episode, but God, the stuff with Matsuda, I'm like, you're being a baka and we don't have time for this. So I could see somebody arguing in the comments, like, the aspects of the writing in this episode that were a little bit weaker than the standard that Death Note has given us. But honestly, I'm fine with it. I liked this episode and enjoyed it. It just feels like, one, a setup episode. It's setting things up for what's going to happen next. It feels like a setup episode. And two, it involves Matsuda as a main character, who I'm glad Matsuda gets some focus, but the series is Elle and Lights and Misa's, to be fair. So I'm like, Matsuda, I'm glad he got some focus, but I feel like the mangaka was like, yeah, we need Matsuda focus. you should care about Matsuda. But that's the weird thing. I don't think this episode didn't make me care more for Matsuda. It didn't make me like empathize with him any more than I already did. It just gave him something to do, and it was a way to advance the plot to them narrowing down that it's Yotsuba and that one of them is Kira. So I guess it serves its purpose. It just does so in a very odd way, but it's Death Note, so what else do you expect? So I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. Please no hints, clues, or spoilers, but I'm curious to know what you thought of this episode, and I hope you all enjoyed the reaction and discussion, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to wait till episode 20. We shall see. So in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with episode 20 of Death Note. Bye.